Welcome to the Energy in Motion podcast, exploring what makes us move, what makes us thrive, what makes us happy, what keeps us alive. I'm Susie Rowland, a mother, writer, poet and founder of the Happy in School project. As humans, we are emotional beings, literally energy in motion, which each of us express uniquely. Our energies influence everything in our lives. Join me in conversation with an eclectic range of guests using their energies to powerful effect. Tune in for the first series of Energy in Motion podcast. You'll find the Energy in Motion podcast on your favourite digital download channels. I can't wait for you to tune in and relax and enjoy the sound of Energy in Motion. Lorna, thank you for joining me on my podcast today. It's actually fantastic to talk to you again. I know we've spoken in the past before, and I still have many more questions for you. There's so much to talk about in relation to women and birth and bringing forth a new life and all the things that you've done. So I'm so excited that you're here today on the podcast. And I'll start off by asking you a little bit about what you've done in the past. I see you have the Black Mamas Birth Village as your new sort of entity, but tell us a little bit more about what's brought you to this point and what you've done, with families in the past.
Thank you, Susie. I feel quite honoured to be on here today. It was years ago, a few years ago,
Yes.
since we last spoke, and so much has happened since then. So where do I begin? Okay, so I have been working now with families for actually over 30 years. I began working with families in my late teens, so it's been actually quite a bit over 30 years. I qualified as a nursery nurse back in the mid-80s, and I've been working with families in a variety of settings since then. Started off working in the old day nurseries as they were back in the day in Birmingham. I then, as a teenager, packed my bags and went to London, the one kind of little case. And I worked in children's homes, residential social worker roles, the old family centres as we knew them years ago. And I guess the most recent role would have been as a parenting assessment worker. So I'd work within social services, assessing parents with their children. It was in my role as a Sure Start deputy manager and health coordinator that I realised that actually a lot of generally moms who would come along to the groups were really dissatisfied with their birth experience. I was, for example, I would deliver baby massage sessions for these mothers, and they'd come along with their newborn babies. And I used to get a bit frustrated that I'm keen to get on with the lesson, and teach the massage strokes with their babies. And they were really kind of like every week coming back and talking about their birth experiences. And I noticed there were themes coming up. There was disappointment in their experience. There was a feeling of lack of support during their whole kind of perinatal journey, so through pregnancy, birth, and when they had their babies. And that was a feeling of being let down by the system, but also by their partners or their family members. And I heard about doulas back then. This would have been about 2005, I think. I heard about doulas, and I had a brief conversation with my manager at the time, and she was saying, start this volunteer doula project in this area. And I said, no, it's not going to work. We have so much deprivation in the area. There are other things I think families really want to focus on, and maybe the whole thing about birth support isn't their thing. So the idea was shelved. But when that seed is planted, it was, and by then I'd had my own 2 kids. They were fairly grown up. I had no idea how important the birth experience is to not only the parents, the mother, the child, communities. So how we birth is so important. And it was only when I trained as a doula, and that was around about 13 years ago, that I began to understand the importance of having a a positive experience. And that doesn't have to be, you know, the home birth, the water birth, the low intervention birth. You can have a very positive cesarean birth, for example. But it's how you're treated and how you're made to feel throughout your journey to parenthood that can make it positive or maybe not so good. So that's what I've done in the past.
Fantastic. I mean, when you mentioned about having a positive birth experience, and what springs to mind, and I hear so much in the therapeutic space, is about women's voices being heard, and having agency and having choice and having input. But obviously birth can still be dangerous. So how do you balance the agency and the parental voice versus the safety of the child coming into the world, and the safety of the mother as well? I mean, that must be quite difficult to balance.
It is quite difficult, and especially in a system that's actually like a bit of a conveyor belt. I mean, let's be honest, when it comes to maternity, it is a more or less a one-size-fits-all system. It's a huge system that struggles to give that individual care and address people's, needs, whether that be kind of learning needs, cultural needs, health needs. So, you're kind of shoved into a box. Once you kind of book in and say, yes, I'm pregnant, get that confirmed, you get all your initial health checks done, your bloods, your measurements, your blood pressure, all that kind of stuff. And then you do tend to get shoved into a bit of a box and shoved down a certain care pathway according to those measurements or your history. And it's difficult to balance that, as you said, the whole, health of mother, health of baby. But one thing I have to say is that when mothers and parents ask for or make it known that they have a certain choice or that a certain request for their birth. For example, home birthing. So it's a current one. So a parent that maybe has been shoved down the high risk care pathway, but says, hold on a minute, I don't want that medicalized birth. I want a home birth. I know that having a home birth will give me a more satisfying birth experience, has more chance of having a more positive birth experience. Trying to balance that against the caregivers, but there's risk there, can be tricky. And what I say to the health professionals is parents are really good at doing research. They're good at knowing what they want, and they don't pluck these ideas generally out of the sky. So when we hear a parent or a mother saying, I want, despite your guidance or advice, I want to birth this way, we need to listen. It's not a whim. It's important to them. We need to listen.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think there's maybe concerns about, if anything goes wrong, it's that whole risk assessment thing that needs to be balanced out. But that's really important that, as you say, parents do their research. There's a lot of information out there, and it's one of the most important decisions of your life.
It's huge.
So why wouldn't your view be heard and considered at the very least? I think that's quite important to take into account. So you moved on from, you did all that family work, and then you specialised with sort of the birthing experience. And we do hear a lot, particularly with Black women or global majority women, about birth trauma. And would you agree that some of that trauma is because that woman's views haven't been heard and haven't been acted upon?
Absolutely. I mean, it's such a complicated, complex thing, trauma, throughout, pregnancy, birth, and the forgotten bit is the postpartum bit, that can also be really traumatic. I mean, the short answer is yes, not having your voice listened to, being disrespected, let's be honest about it, during your interactions with health workers can be very traumatic. And things like, giving real life examples, telling somebody that you are in excruciating pain and it doesn't feel right. We know that pain at birth, is not the most comfortable thing. It can be experienced painfully for many, many people. But when a mother says, hold on, this pain, this is something different, and then not having that listened to, and then being made to kind of continue throughout, your labour in that amount of pain and not given the right pain relief, or sometimes not offered pain relief. Now that in itself is very traumatic, and you will generally relive that experience over and over and over again, even though you may have your healthy baby in your arms. And it's not just about having a healthy baby in your arms. The whole thing about, well, at least your baby is healthy and all that matters is a healthy baby. No, 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 no. Let's have mothers and parents coming through the whole journey, whole in body, mind, spirit, soul.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that whole concept of, what happens afterwards, we know a little bit more now about the onset of postnatal depression can actually begin during pregnancy, and how that is identified and managed, and the issues around parental blame are real. That can be an issue as well. Well, this is just motherhood. You're tired, you're overtired, and again, at what point does tiredness? At what point is tiredness actually postpartum depression? Postnatal depression, sorry. So I think that's that thing about being heard. But how can you, as a woman who is tired and has a newborn baby, how can you advocate for yourself when you are literally at your most vulnerable?
Yeah, I hear that. So I think it's about having conversations about advocacy during your pregnancy. And I say to the women that I support in the birth village, I say it's too late to start thinking about things like advocacy. How am I going to manage that tiredness in those early weeks after having baby? It's too late to think about that once baby's here, already in your arms, already screaming down the place. It's too late. We need to have these conversations with the people around us. Where has that village gone?
Yes.
And even though we don't have the village of old, again, I'd certainly talk about how we can create and curate our own support networks, our own village during pregnancy. It won't look like your aunt's or your mum's or your grandma's village back in the day, but we can look at creating that in pregnancy and holding people to task. I say that it's okay telling me that, it's okay, Lorna, I'll be fine because Auntie Flo lives in the next street. I'm like, well, that's great. I'm glad that Auntie Flo lives there, but why not kind of pin Auntie Flo down? Not physically, but why not, because what will happen is when you have your baby, Auntie Flo will come. Right?
Yeah.
What I see happening is Auntie Flo will come, she'll sit on your sofa, she'll eat your biscuits and drink your tea.
Right? Yes.
She'll keep you awake with nattering, right? Yeah. She'll hold the baby because, everyone likes to hold the baby. Nobody wants to hold the mother. Yeah. But that's not the most useful thing that Auntie Flo can do. So I say, get your friends and relatives around you and say, you know what, Auntie Flo, I love your oxtail. So can you, when the baby's here, can you make your oxtail and bring it round, drop it off off Auntie Flo and go.
Yes, yes.
Right? And so, you've got a car. If I give you a list, can you do my shopping? Yeah? Because it's not always the most helpful thing to hold the baby, especially if you're breastfeeding. You need that baby glued to the chest for the first few weeks to get that milk established. And it's not the most helpful thing to take the baby in the next room for hours on end. And the milk is now, not coming in properly or starting to dry up. Yes. So pin people down to specifics, find out what their availability is. Don't make assumptions that they're going to come around and help you. Be specific, be bold.
So, you could even be creative if you're that kind of person and say, set up your support group on WhatsApp so they can all talk to each other about who's doing the shopping, who's visited. You could get to a point where on day 3, everyone's busy, and then what?
Exactly, and that's it. And people come round en masse. Nobody wants, whether you've home birth or hospital birth, really nobody wants all the relatives round the day you arrive, I mean, I've heard of people coming home and people are at the door already, and it's like, can you imagine,
Wow.
you've got stitches, your boobs are aching and
Yes.
throbbing, you've got this newborn baby that you don't know about yet, and then, you don't know each other, and then you've got people en masse in your
Yes.
home. I just can't imagine anything like that. For me, that's a
Yeah.
complete nightmare. There's lots of, in the the online, phase of life now, we can do WhatsApp groups. There's
Yeah.
a website called mealtrain.com or .co.uk. People just
Yeah.
type in what meals they can bring for you.
Nice.
And there's postpartum doulas.
Aha. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, so I still do postpartum work. So you can be hired by a family. I go around daily for the first week, 4 hours a day. We decide what we're going to do. And that could be doing things like just sitting and reassuring a new mother, feeding issues, or demonstrating things like bathing the baby. I don't do housework. You hire a cleaner for that, but somebody who can just be there as a listening ear, that non-judgmental listening ear, who will deeply listen to you, who is not there to lead from the front, but to kind of be beside you and journey alongside you as you are starting to blossom and develop into this mother and parent. So
yeah.
that, in a nutshell, is what postpartum doulas do. And we can
Wonderful.
pick up on little things where you're slightly struggling, and we can signpost you to other organisations if necessary.
I was just thinking about that poor mother arriving at home and everyone's there. I want to see the baby.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're like, I want to go to sleep.
Yeah. So I've been a gatekeeper before. I've been like a bit of a pit bull as a postpartum doula. Like, I've been like, oh no, sorry, under doctor's orders, not today, but please call. I'm sure another time you could come and visit.
Yes.
Keep people at bay a little bit because it's a bit overwhelming.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about overwhelm, I was just thinking, you could be a mother who happens to be neurodivergent and find, that I was thinking about the advocacy about whether you want to be at home or whether you want to be, what does your birth setting look like? And I was thinking about that whole sensory overload of being in hospital. And you've got your bright lights, you've got your, the sounds of other people labouring.
So noisy. It's so
very noisy. You've got the smells of food you might not be used to. Then you've got your kind of overly harsh, chemically cleaning smells. And then, and then there's other people's babies crying. So, for a mother who is very sensitive to sound or has quite a sensory profile, it sounds like an absolute nightmare. That would be the worst place you'd want to be.
Yeah,
in those early days of bonding with your child, you just want to smell the top of their head and look at count their toes and get into that whole, building that little nest between you. And you can't because your senses are bombarded with all of this stuff going on around you.
I agree. I mean, luckily now we are more aware of neurodiversity, and we can. People don't know this, but what you can do, or what you and an advocate or you and a doula can do, is you can meet with a consultant midwife at the hospital, or even if you're home birthing, and make a plan. Make a plan to kind of dampen down some of that kind of sensory stuff that goes on, generally in a hospital setting. We have more awareness, we have more care, we can quieten things down, we can dim lights, we can, put a sign on the door saying quiet, please. We can put in our birth plan, neurodivergent parent, and these are the things that, kind of trigger me and that I don't, want to happen or listen to or smell during my birth experience. And so we can plan for that. Not totally, we can't obviously take it all away, but at least we are more aware and we can provide some care that goes to addressing those needs.
And also in terms of pain relief, I was thinking in terms of, is there still that perception that somehow global majority women are more able to tolerate pain, than their then they're sisters of other cultures, for example. Is that still a thing, thought process that's happening, do you think?
I would love to say that myth has been completely busted, Susie, I would. But yes, awareness, is certainly has been raised, and I reckon there'll be less of it. But I still think these thoughts, these myths still exist among people. So again, it's that kind of having to pipe up. Ideally, as somebody who's birthing, we should just be able just to birth and focus on our birthing. We need strong advocates around us, whether that's our partner, our family members, or a doula. We need those strong advocates. Say, hold on a minute, did you hear what she said? She's in pain. Can you go and fetch? And I've done it before myself as a doula, and said, look, this is not acceptable. Can someone please give this person pain relief? And it's happened. But we need those strong advocates to pipe up and speak up.
I suppose it's one of those challenges around advocacy, in that it's that whole, you're the patient, not the professional. And this translates in many fields where you're a parent or a woman, and a Black woman in particular. And if you are advocating, or if you are speaking up or piping up and trying to explain how you feel, explain what's happening, basically tell your lived experience and explain it from your perspective, there is that concern that you are either angry, or you don't know what you're talking about, or you're speaking from a state of ignorance and anger. And so in those moments when you are most vulnerable and most in need of compassion, you could be actually responded to in quite a negative way.
Yes.
A negative way which is seen to be, you need to calm down, which the psychotherapy community generally knows that if a person is agitated, the last thing you do is tell them, calm down. It's looking at how can we get the nervous system back into a state of calm, but actually without telling the person to calm down. So how are those situations managed when some of that emotional distress is misinterpreted?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. First of all, I must say, when you said the nervous system, my hypnobirthing brain leaps into, so I'm also a hypnobirthing instructor. And for those who don't know what hypnobirthing does, in a nutshell, we teach parents, we give them tools to help them relax very deeply during their labour and birth. And you practice these methods. It can be things like breathing techniques, use of affirmations, use of hypnotic scripts, and various other tools that you practice during your pregnancy, and then bring out that toolbox during your labour and birth to help you really relax deeply. But one thing I will say, Susie, that it's really, it's a double whammy when it comes to Black women birthing here in the UK, and I'm sure in other places around the world too, is that we're scared to pipe up for the reasons that you said. We can be seen as the angry, aggressive one. We can then feel threatened that, we're going to be referred to all kinds of agencies. So it can be quite punitive when we speak up. But then what happens then is we're afraid to engage with services because of that threat of maybe, being referred to things like social services or mental health services that you may deem is not appropriate for you. So that leaves us, in danger. I hear of women, for example, Black women who are, they're scared to engage in maternity services, for example. They may know that they're pregnant, but may not book it in to the last minute. They have no antenatal care or very little antenatal care or screening. Okay, so we don't know what we're dealing with here with regards to health of baby or health of mother. They're scared too because maybe in the previous pregnancy, they weren't treated very well, and they feel traumatized by that engagement with the system. So now they they feel compelled to not engage, and so they're unsafe. So it's almost like damned if you do and damned if you don't,
Mm-hmm. So some women are actively opting out of the screening for preeclampsia, for example, high blood pressure, and any other sort of issues, prenatal issues that might be discovered with the baby, because they are in fear?
They're in fear. Sometimes it can be fear of losing the birth that they want, the desire to birth in a certain place or in a certain way, and having that very over medicalized birth. And that for some people can be really scary, And they're frightened then of what are the side effects. If I hand myself over and I'm given all these drugs and given all these interventions, then induced, and then the induction fails, and I have my cesarean section. What is the long-term effect on my baby and me and our bonding? It's really complex.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like there needs to be more information, and information that feels culturally sensitive, and delivered in a way that's transparent. And I suppose there are many layers to that question, because what is cultural sensitivity? What's the content of that information? What is the motive of the person who's delivering that information? And how, in terms of transparency, how much are the systems trusted by various communities?
Oh, you're spot on. You've nailed it. I mean, this is why I started, the Birth Village, and I have an antenatal program. It's not like the antenatal course you'll get at the hospital or you pay for. It's literally a program where I say, come in, you're Black and you're pregnant, or mixed race and you're pregnant, come in. There's lots of content that I've created and curated with other Black birth professionals, on all of the kind of topics throughout all the trimesters. So they have access to all of that. Each month we'll discuss a certain birth or baby topic each month, and they stay under my wing, as it were, until the baby reaches 3 months of age. So, we have a WhatsApp group. So if you want to talk to each other or talk to me, we have a private online community. We have the open Facebook group. There's so many touch points, because I want them to know that, you have somebody that cares, and you have somebody that you can access. No, I am not a midwife or a doctor, so I cannot give any clinical advice, but I will listen. And I'm happy to signpost, and I'm happy to support. And sometimes I'm happy to also advocate on your behalf.
I think that's a really fantastic resource for parents. And is that national? It's
national. So I'm based in Birmingham, but so long as you've got access to a smartphone, or a laptop or a tablet, you can access all of that. The Facebook group, the antenatal program, you can access all of that. And the antenatal program is now free at the moment. As long as you're Black and mixed race and pregnant, you can join.
That's absolutely fantastic. So just to say that name more clearly for people that didn't catch it the first time.
Yeah, so it's Black Mama's Birth Village, and you'll find us online, you'll find us on Facebook, you'll find me on Instagram.
Fantastic. But just on that, I think it would be really interesting and useful to have clinical expertise in that forum as well, if that were possible, because that can be the point where it's a difference between someone having a C-section, for example, or someone not, or someone having a vaginally assisted birth that requires, stitches and all the rest of it. And then we get into how are the women supported in their recovery if they have had such, an interventionist birth. And I think there's care required, and I think there's always a desire for these things to be natural. We feel that as animals we should, sort of go off into a forest and bear down, and then our cubs appear. And sadly, that's not quite the case with humans. And I think we just don't know what kind of birth we're going to have. But I think it's quite interesting, and I'd love to see or find out some data about what you've experienced before before and during your pregnancy and how that impacts what type of pregnancy and birth you have? Have you come across anything like that?
I haven't got any data. I guess kind of anecdotally, what I see, first of all, a lot of parents, expectant parents, scrolling through Instagram, like, they're following all these accounts and they tell me themselves it's getting confusing. It's this kind of constant kind of hunger for information and preparation. And I think people are overdoing it, first of all. And I think I advise people just to maybe follow one or two that you think are giving kind of sage advice and sage posts and not misleading you. And I see things like, mum saying, well, I drink kale smoothies for breakfast, for lunch and for dinner, for a healthy pregnancy. We know it's a complete lot of tosh, right? So follow people that are giving you things that are sensible. Inform yourself for sure. That's really important. Do some preparation. Have some self-belief in your body. But what is slightly controversial that I say is try and make a relationship with those who are supposed to be looking after you. So your midwives, your doctors, your obstetrician, your consultant. Try and make a relationship with them because they're there to serve you. And if we're always pushing back and always kind of rejecting everything, on no real grounds, then we might find ourselves in a tricky situation, I know sometimes it can be fraught, the relationship between, midwives and the parents to be, it can be really fraught. And I get why, I get it. But if we can somehow come to some kind of agreement or ask to speak to somebody else, get a second opinion about what they're saying to you, it's for the better, I think. I think it's for the better because otherwise you are just, you're running around with all these things in your head. And that doesn't make really for a great pregnancy or a great birth or even a great motherhood journey.
I think that's a really interesting point about building that relationship with the professionals around you. And I think it's very much a lottery, though, depending on who those people are, which local authority you're in, what are their thoughts and perceptions around Black women. And what experience and what exposure have they got? So I think I can understand why people feel they want to opt out of building relationships. And it's very difficult when you are in need and you do need their specialism. But they may have made an offhanded comment, for example, on child number 3, are we? Or, and I've heard those comments before.
Me too. But you can ask to change. Again, people don't know this generally. You can ask to change your midwife. So if you're lucky enough to be assigned a midwife during your antenatal phase, and you're not getting on, or they're dropping comments like that, I would definitely say this is not working for me. Racist comments, racist attitudes and behaviors and treatment is not for me. I want to change my midwife. Even during labor, if you're having a midwife who's not giving you, a good standard of care, who's not treating you respectfully, the person who's with you, not you when you're in labor, but the person with you needs to go to the front desk, speak to the shift leader, and say, we request to change our midwife for these reasons. And that is a very reasonable request.
Yeah. I'm just wondering how practical that is. I'm thinking of the current status of the NHS. And
I know.
Do you still actually have a midwife that you stay with for the duration of your pregnancy and birth? Or do you have sometimes, and that's the thing, it's hard to build a relationship if you've got, a temporary person coming in, can't think, what is a standby or whatever. And so, next week you might see someone different, and the week after you go back to your original lady. So how can you build those relationships if you've got such a high staff turnover?
It's very difficult because, yes, at the moment people are cared for by teams of midwives in the antenatal phase, In some areas, if you're lucky, they have the continuity of carer model when you will be assigned a midwife or just a very small team of midwives. You'll get to know them quite intimately during the antenatal phase. But for others, you rock up at your antenatal appointment and who knows who you're going to get, which in itself is really problematic. But because we are so under-resourced, we're short of no midwives, short of midwives. Midwives are stretched already. They're working all the hours. They're called in, sometimes on their day off sometimes to come and cover things. It's very, very difficult. I have no answers to how you make that relationship when you are looked after within a huge team of midwives. It's difficult.
That's a question to ask maybe at the start of your journey, once you've gone into the NHS and you've announced or you've checked and confirmed that you're pregnant. One of the early questions could be, do you have a team system here of midwives, or will I have the same person all the way through? At which point they may laugh you out of the office.
Yeah.
Oh, we've got a new one here.
Yeah.
First time mother.
First time a newbie. Oh my God, in for a shock. But the thing is, though, if you are lucky enough, or if you have the option to choose a home birth, I mean, that for me is like the gold standard, because you will then have that small home birth team around you, and they will come and they will attend to you at home. So you'll have most of your antenatal care will be done at home, for example. You'll know. So on the day or night of your labour happening, the person who rocks up to your home birth, you'll know them already. It's only a small home birth team generally, so you'll know them already and have that relationship already. Above that, then you have independent midwives, and I guess that's the kind of platinum standard of care. Of course, that's a paid-for service, and it's not always accessible to people. But there's always doulas. So as doulas, we provide a continuity. Whilst the care is not clinical care, you have that continuity of having your special person who, by the time you come to labour and birth, will know you very well. You've built that relationship during your pregnancy over time, who knows you very well, has that trust, who's on your side. They're working with you and for you, they're not working for the system. So that's another option for continuity of care. But again, we know that not everyone can afford a doula.
So how do you go about getting what you call the home standard, the gold standard home birth? So if you're, at what point is that decision made during your trimesters, and how much authority or agency does a parent have in saying, no, this is what I want, and they may be talked out of it, but whose decision is that ultimately?
So, okay, another complex one. So first of all, it depends where you live. Home birth services are very much a postcode lottery, literally a postcode lottery. Here in Birmingham, you could literally live, you have one person on that side of the street, the other person on that side of the street. Person A is within area and person B isn't, and they're on the same street. So first of all, it's difficult if you're not in the area, okay? They probably say, no, we can't service you because you're out of area, okay? And that's a big one. Secondly, access and availability. So sometimes, with home birth teams, there's the whole thing again about maybe not having a full complement of midwives. So they're short. So when one goes off sick, they're even shorter. So even though you've booked a home birth and you think you're having a home birth, on the day or night you're in labour and you call up and say, okay, it's happening. They're like, I'm really sorry. We don't have the staff to send out to you. You're going to have to come in. Wow. So that in itself is very difficult. Everyone, what I will say is, if you want a home birth, you can home birth.
Yeah.
Not to say that the team will come out to support you. There is the option of free birthing. So free birthing is birthing generally at home without the support or assistance of any medical staff.
Wow.
So you may just have the support of your partner. For some doulas will also support home births, but not in a medical capacity. So there's that option. So in theory, everybody can home birth, because if you choose to free birth, then you just get on with it.
That's called free birth.
Free birthing, yeah.
But basically, as a mother, you take the risk.
Yeah.
And if something, for example, if you have the cord wrapped around the baby's neck and dad isn't going there, then you just call an ambulance or you get taken into A&E. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, generally, cord around the neck is not a serious thing at all. It's very normal. Cords don't generally, strangle babies. They have this Wharton's jelly. It's very slippy. Okay, so the cord's very slippy, so it moves. Okay, so it won't, generally damage the baby. But there can be emergencies, surely. There can be emergencies during birth, and there's nobody at home to assist or knows what to do. So it is very much a call 999 and get the paramedics out to either assist or get you into hospital very, very quickly. But that's not on a whim. People don't free birth or have an unassisted birth on a whim. They've decided for many, many reasons. Again, it might be previous birth trauma. It might be just fear of engaging with services, all kinds of things. So it's something that people look into. There are groups on social media that, free birth and unassisted birth groups where they talk a lot about these things. And so, yes, it's a valid option for those who want it. And I don't judge either way. If that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. So it's an option.
So if you had an issue, you may not know it's an issue. If you had a breach, you don't know it's breached until you are labouring. Whereas if you were in hospital, that would have been identified through the scans. So would you, I'm just a curiosity question now, just thinking practically, and you had this issue and the birth wasn't progressing. Is it best to call an ambulance because then they can provide assistance, medical assistance, or would you say it's probably better to get yourself to A&E? Would you suggest that a labouring lady is driven to hospital or ambulanced to hospital?
That's a really good question. If it were the case of a breech birth, so you were now aware that this baby's breech, maybe a foot has come out.
Yes.
Maybe the bottom is appearing first.
Yes.
And really, you have options of course, calling the paramedics. Paramedics generally won't know what to do with breech birthing. That's the first thing. Many midwives have never even seen or supported a vaginal breech birth. That's the second thing.
They haven't.
No. So recently there's been some breech training that's gone around different hospital trusts, and there are then small teams of midwives and obstetricians who have been taught the art of supporting vaginal breech birth. But then those people move on.
Are they so rare?
In the grand scheme of things, vaginal breech birth is quite a rare thing. Generally, if your baby is breached at the very end of your pregnancy, people are generally counselled into having a cesarean section. Okay, so if you're at home and you're birthing and you're free birthing or unassisted birthing, and you're then made aware of that your baby is actually coming breech. You have the option to go ahead. We have a mom in the group who had a free birth in the Facebook group. She actually free birthed twins, and at least one of them were breech. Amazing. It's not. It slightly terrifies me, but amazing. But yeah, if the paramedics come, they will drive you in. Or if baby is so far out, then baby's coming, and they can stay to just facilitate that and just catch the baby, basically. It's It's such a drama thing, isn't it, this birthing? It can be. I find it really exciting. I've always been excited by births. I don't go to many births now. I was just telling you before we started recording, it's a lot. You could be there 16, 18 hours more. And it's tiring, and I'm getting old. So I just do the occasional. I just support the occasional birth now. But it always amazes me. I'll never get bored of seeing birth unfold or seeing labour unfold. It's amazing.
So tell me a little bit about, we talk about birth trauma, but let's flip that narrative and talk about birth joy. What does that look like?
Oh my God. You see, every time I hear the word birth joy, I get goosebumps. And I'm very fortunate that within my role as a birth doula, kind of going to birth and witnessing birth joy. I feel very blessed and fortunate, because people sometimes think birth is just awful. It doesn't have to be awful. Birth joy can happen in the theatre, in the operating theatre of cesarean birth. Birth joy can happen at home. Birth joy can happen in the maternity ward or in the birth centre. What it looks like, and I'm telling you, once that baby has arrived, that look on the mother's face as baby is making their way into the world, gosh, if you could bottle that and sell it on, that thing, it'd be worth millions, because the look of triumph, the look of empowerment,
wow,
power, but also vulnerability and softness, all of that in one facial expression,
gosh,
is powerful. It's magical.
Yes.
For a mother to say and think, I did that. Do you know where I see it most often is the women who've had previous cesarean birth, and they go for what we call a VBAC, vaginal birth after
cesarean, yes.
Yeah. And they do that, and especially when it's a home birth as well. And I've been at one of my clients, 2 of her VBACs at home, or HBACs as I call it, H for home. And her first birth was so traumatic. And when she spoke about the memories of what happened at that birth and the whole, dashing down the trolley towards theatre, the whole thing about them physically trampling on her paper birth plan, it had somehow slipped out of the notes, was on the floor, and her birth team, carers, had it underneath their feet. That stuck in her memory. And so when she came to me and said, Lorna, I want to birth differently. Me and my husband, we had an awful time. I want to birth at home. And they're telling me, it's not a good idea because I had a cesarean, but I want to do this. I said, okay, I'm going to support you. The look on her face when that baby slipped out into that birth pool and she caught her baby and put her baby onto her chest, that look is just chef's kiss. It's just
priceless. Yes.
And they don't forget it, and they keep recalling, I did it. Remember that time, Lorna, when I did it? I said, yeah, girl, you did it. I saw you. I witnessed you doing it.
Yes.
Amazing.
So, I mean, I'm really intrigued now about your thoughts on having a photographer. I have seen them in in the birth suite to catch her. Tell me what you think about that.
Okay, there are 2 thoughts, really. First of all, I'm not sure if I could. I mean, I'm way past childbearing years now, but if I were to have a baby, could I? I'm not sure. But what I will say is, I actually think it's a really good idea. If they are not intrusive, we know that birth unfolds more smoothly and more quickly if birth is undisturbed. So if you've literally got somebody like in your face with a flash camera, it ain't going to work. So they need to be kind of discreet in their taking of pics. But I say to people who are maybe, considering having pictures taken, and it could just be a relative on their phone, taking some pictures, do it, because when you are birthing, there's a certain part of your birth where you literally turn inside of yourself. And what we say is you go in to fetch your baby out, basically. You go inside. It's gorgeous. And you see it happening. She's now unresponsive. There's no point talking to her or saying anything because she's gone inside, okay? Taking those pictures helps that when you've had your baby and you're looking back at your experience, you won't be aware of what's gone on in the room because you're inside. So having those pictures of you birthing is like, that's how it was. That's what I did. Because you're under these impressions that, I was screaming the place down. And generally you're not. And you have a little video, have a picture, you can see what actually happened. Now, I was at a birth last year where we had a film crew, Susie.
Oh, my gosh.
I know.
My gosh.
I had a production company contact me on social media saying, we want to record, important life transitions, life events in Black families. So we want to record a funeral, a wedding, a birth, and another, I forgot what it was. And they said to me, do you know anybody, any Black moms or Black parents who will be willing to have their birth film? So I said, hold on a minute, hold on. Let's have a conversation before I, start giving out names. Let's have a conversation. I want to know how you're going to do this, because birth is generally a private affair, and you can literally put the mother off and get her out of her birthing vibe if you're there with bright lights, studio lights and boom mics and things. I said, no, we're not going to do it that way. They showed me some previous work by the filmmaker. We had a good long conversation about it and how it could work. And then I put it out to a few people who were pregnant and said, there's no obligation, you don't have to, but would you be willing to do this? And had a mom said, yeah, she was having baby number 6. 5 girls, and she was birthing at home, and she said, I would love to. I said, okay, we'll have an initial meeting with me and the filmmakers, and let's see where we go with it. Had the meeting, they were like, yeah, definitely want to do this. And so this film, and we're hoping it's going to be on iPlayer at a later date. It's long in the making, but it was actually very beautiful. They were very respectful. We had a minimal people in the room. It was just 2 filmmakers with 2 cameras. The sound guys were outside. They had their stuff in the car outside. So it was two filmmakers, myself as a doula. But this mom, quite amazingly, she loves to have lots of people at her births. So she had all of her 5 girls present.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I know. She had family members in, had aunties coming in with food. We had sisters dropping in. We had all kinds of people in and out of that space, which is what they love. For them, their births are like a community event.
Yes.
So for them, it was the perfect thing, and they loved it, and it was a beautiful birth.
What did she have?
A girl.
I thought you were going to say, and she had a boy. Bless her.
6 girls, yeah, 6 beautiful girls.
Princesses,
yes.
So the production company, I'm intrigued. What were they looking for? Why were they looking for Black families to?
They really wanted to document, life transitions. What does it mean when we have a funeral, within our culture or cultures? What does it mean to marry and to have a wedding, and what does it look like? And I thought it was a great idea. It was great and I know they filmed a funeral here in the West Midlands, because we have this wonderful Black funeral directors, and they had the whole horse and carriage and the whole thing, capturing the kind of spiritual elements as well as the physical elements. In a really creative and respectful way. This is not like shock TV, because I've been approached a few times about filming. So I've had, a production company, one born every minute, saying, "Oh, can we, any parents that you think?" But that's kind of shock TV. That's drama. And I said, you know what?
Yes.
To be honest, I don't think your viewers would like to film a birth where you have a doula present, because generally they're quite calm and people want drama and shouting and all that stuff up there, where I think your viewers would nod off. To be it's not drama film, so
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I look forward to seeing that program. I'm quite intrigued.
I hope to see it too, because I'm dying to see it. We've had some stills. I've seen some stills shots, and they are really beautiful.
Oh, it sounds lovely. It sounds lovely. So I think that the work of motherhood it starts in the womb. You could even go say it starts from choosing a partner.
As I say before then, actually, because what we're missing, and I don't think we've ever had it though, is that preconception. So first of all, choosing the partner, with parenthood in mind. I'm not sure that actually happens, that almost not interviewing or, not so formal, but, knowing what each other's views are about parenthood, about discipline, about school education, about health, about pregnancy, about work, about finance. I don't think we enter, and that's everybody, enter long-term relationships or marriage with that in mind so much.
I think that's a brilliant point. Sorry to cut you. I've literally recently watched Love is Blind.
Oh, I think I've seen some of that. Yes, I have. No, I have seen it, yes.
And I watched the one which was the UAE, United Arab Emirates. I can't say that word. And so they were mainly Arabic, Syrian, Moroccan, a real mix of mostly very beautiful contestants, but from different parts of the Arab world. And they have, some of them were Muslims, so they had that kind of, Love is Blind, we talked in the pods, and they asked all the key questions, and, they all assumed they were going to have families, and, what are your thoughts on having, 10 kids and da-da-da. But that whole thing, it made me really think about the impact of culture and women, and it is kind of inherited. And if we have seen our parents be a single parent, we kind of have a different approach to going into that relationship, with our child's father. We kind of think, well, if it doesn't work, I'll do it by myself. And if I'm going to have a birth partner, my mum can be there, or my auntie, my sister can be there. And it is really sort of genetic and historic in how we become mothers. I think it's very interesting. And then in the same way, how we parent, we definitely parent like our parents, until we unlearn some of the things that we didn't like, that didn't work for us.
Yes.
So it's a constant evolution. And I think that as global majority Black and brown women, because we are a diaspora community, which is a kind of contradiction in terms, isn't it?
Community, diaspora, yeah.
Exactly, because we know we have the commonality of our Black or brown skin, but I don't know the heritage, and I know that my mother and father were from Jamaica, but where were they from before that?
Yeah.
And what was the cultural norm around their heritage? Are they from Ghana? Is our family Nigerian in origin? Are we from South Africa? We don't know. So all of those norms around choosing a partner, choosing a husband, choosing a father, and how we birth them and how we raise them in our village, all of that knowledge is invisible. And we're kind of trying to retrofit that and trying to figure it out as we go along, to undo all of the wrong that was done to us in terms of how we don't know the origins of our cultural, what was normal for our family, what was normal, what was the culture, how did we bring new lives in, who was there. So I think it's really interesting. I was just going back to this Habibi, seeing how they all had this really strong sense of the culture. And although they went against the rules of the program, some of them said, well, I can't marry you, and because I do love you, I want to marry you, but you have to see my family first.
Right.
You have to meet my parents first. So kind of saying, I'm going to blow the program because I really care about you, but there won't be any marriage.
Right.
Not today.
Right.
And I thought that was really brave, because having watched some of the other episodes, they kind of, you have the whole thrill of, are they going to say yes or no? And these guys, they were taking it seriously. They were like, it's a program, and I understand it's a program, but I do want to marry you, but this is how it works for us.
Right. Wow.
Yes, exactly. This is how it works.
Well, I love those, Susie. I see this amongst the youngers mainly, this searching, this kind of like shrugging off stuff that they've been maybe taught and the way they've been socialized, and this searching and going back into ancestry and trying to cling on or find bits to kind of bring forward. And I find that really exciting. I really do. Because I think we've lost stuff. I think we've lost that sense of community. I see how even when we have groups together, people are struggling to talk, to speak, to share, to just to kind of commune with each other, and it's sad. I find it really sad, and I don't know. I don't know, in my lifetime when I was younger, did we have it? And I guess actually we did, because we'd have the whole thing about family get-togethers, family parties. Maybe it's happening now, but I just don't see it. I don't see that so much.
Yeah, I think there is that we've kind of adopted a very westernized. You live separate to your family, you have your kids, and
Individualism.
You go and visit them at the weekend.
Absolutely. And that whole thing about now, what I see a lot in our Facebook group is, my mom does things this way, I'm going to tell her she can't come round and see the kids if she does that. And I'm like, we're throwing away our parents. Now, of course, if your parent is causing harm, whether psychological or physical, that's a different matter. But the whole thing about binning people off, for me, at the drop of a hat, I'm like, what is this? What is this? And then being left alone and unsupported and crying about it. It's like, well,
yeah. I think there's a huge. I mean, aside from birth trauma, there is family trauma that kind of, and I see birth and new life as an opportunity to try and heal some of those hurts that sit in our families. And I think, that it's just a lot to put on a baby's head, though, isn't it?
It's a whole heap. And you see, the thing is now, we're learning about all these different kind of parenting styles and, attachment parenting and this kind of parenting. And of course, that's so different from how our parents parented us. And that's where sometimes there's a bit of friction because, a new mum must say, I've read this online, Mom, and, they've said I should do it this way. And then the grandma is saying, but honey, back in my day, we didn't do all of that. Let me show you this way. And there's this kind of friction, which is causing this kind of chasm between families.
Generations, yes.
It really is. And it's sad to see, actually. It's sad.
Yes. But I think that is part of our diaspora effect, because we have our sort of historic memories, some of those that are very deeply buried. Then we have the cultural things that, grandma and auntie used to do that we remember in our lifetimes. And then we have the Western cultures that we see around us that we think we need to adopt as the norm.
Yeah.
So having grandparents or extended family live in the same house, it's like, really? No, I want to get away. But is there a way we can find peace in having an extended family? And do we have to have, individual homes and do things in that sort of 2.4 family? Is that working for us, particularly as we face so many challenges in education and in health and mental health and social care? We kind of have to ask, is it really working for us? I mean, maybe everyone has to ask that, not just global majority folk, but we are the ones most impacted by the systemic biases and discriminations. But is it working for us?
I don't think it is. I mean, there's all of the isms, and then there's the consumerism and all the of course, grandparents now tend to be younger. I mean, I'm a young granny. I'm a grandma. And I have to work. There's also that element, our grandparents are no longer sitting at home knitting, with their mortgage paid off or whatever. We still have to be out there grinding and working and getting the bills paid. So that then takes us away from, the family and being that kind of hub for family members. And of course, also choice, grandparents back then didn't have choices so much. And we have the choice not to be the stay-at-home knitting grandma if we don't want to be. We can be the travelling glamour puss grandma if we want to be.
With a career, exactly. But I think it's all about communicating, even communicating with your daughters and granddaughters. What kind of grandma would you like me to be?
Yeah.
You like me to be?
This is what I can offer. This is what I can offer.
Yes.
I work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. I can offer you a Sunday, or I can offer you half a day on Saturday, whatever it may be. There should be that conversation, as you said, that conversation.
Conversation, and it's reviewing who you are.
Yes.
Have a new identity. Your daughter has a new identity because she's now mother.
Yes.
You're now grandmother. So we're all adopting new roles. So we kind of have to keep talking, don't we?
We do. Otherwise, resentments kind of creep in, and that can cause, hell. Your daughter or your son resenting you for not doing as much as they think they're going to do, or you as the grandparent saying, oh, the kids are over here again. They're more like my kids than your kids. That kind of stuff that goes on. Let's have open and honest and continued conversations. So it's nice and smooth. Let the kids see that it can be smooth.
Mm-hmm. But I think then as I'm not going to say elders. I had to stop myself saying elders. As a different generation, I think we have to also look at ourselves and look at the things that we might need to lose and to upgrade.
Yeah.
To find the words to offer the compassion and support without losing our own boundaries and our own lives.
Yes, it's a balance. It's a real balance, And listening, we need to listen more, I think. I think we don't do enough of that. Listen to what your daughter or your son is telling you about parenting, and sometimes be open, well, not sometimes, but be open to, I guess, criticism about your own parenting, because no one had it perfect. Nobody was a perfect parent. So listen when your daughter says, but Mum, when I was growing up, this is how it was for me. We have to be willing, even though it hurts, but be willing to listen to that.
Absolutely. Oh, I could talk to you forever.
You put the world to rights, Susie.
Doesn't that feel good? That feels so good. Lorna, it's been an absolute pleasure and a joy to talk to you. And we should do it again.
Can we, please?
And I think we will when we do the group session at the end of the series. So until then, it's been an absolute pleasure. Lorna Philip, doula, Black woman, grandmother, founder of Black Mamas Birth Village, all round amazing human being. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Susie. It's been my pleasure. Thank you.